Hey guys, welcome back to Music Theory Facts. Thank you for joining me. This one comes as a request from a viewer, and we're going to be talking about pivot chord modulation. What is a modulation? A modulation is essentially where you take a piece of music that's in one key, and you know what? Scrap that. Let's go back even further. What is a piece of music, okay? In order to craft a piece of music, you need to pick a scale. A scale is a group of notes, whether it's a major scale or a minor scale. The interval distance between the notes used gives the scale its signature flavor. Once you've picked your scale, you then have to harmonize that scale, which essentially means just go every other note and create all the chords within the scale, figure out what the chords are, what they're called, how they function. Once you've decided to pick a scale, let's pick the key of C. We're going to be playing the chords and the notes of the C scale simultaneously. They're going to work together to create harmony in the left hand with chords and melody in the right hand with single notes from the scale, and everything will work in perfect balance. But what happens if we get bored with that and we want to jump to a different key? How do we do it? I look at keys as being like universes, right? Just imagine that. Distant galaxies filled with other universes similar to ours, but how do you get to them? You need a wormhole, right? You need a way to transport yourself to that galaxy as quickly and efficiently as possible. That's where something called pivot chords come in. A pivot chord is essentially a chord that is in the key that you're currently in, and also a chord that's in the new key that you're about to go to. And a perfect example of this would be the key of C. So let's display it on screen for you. All right, key of C. If you notice, the sixth chord in C is A minor. What is another key that has an A minor? That would essentially be a great way to figure out what keys you can go to. We're just going to go as simply as possible here. We're going to go A minor is the 2 chord in the key of G major. So we're going to go from C major to G major, which is a great modulation to begin with because they are closely related keys, meaning that the notes involved in both scales are almost identical. The only difference between C major and G major is that C major has an F and G major has an F sharp. Therefore, all those notes in both scales, they're all friends. They all get along, right? So jumping from the universe of C major to the universe of G major is a relatively smooth transition on the ear. It's not going to be jarring. It's not going to come as a surprise, but it will invoke a feeling of freshness, okay? That pivot chord is the A minor. It's the 6 of C, but it's also the 2 of G. It's the wormhole that gets you between one parallel universe to the other. And so that's essentially what you're doing. You play the A minor, and then instead of doing, like for example, we could do like C major to F major to A minor to F major, all right? And then we're doing essentially a 1-4-6-4 in the key of C. But what if we want to jump to the key of G, right? The most simple way to do this would just be to play the C major up to the F major. That's your 4 again. Now we're going to throw in the A minor, and then we're going to throw in a D major, and that kind of gets us into the key of G major, and then you could follow it with a G chord. So you heard the transition there? So we did C as the 1, and here's a really interesting thing. The ear knows what it knows without you even knowing it. So what I mean by that is you're just naturally set up to associate the notes that are first played with the notes that are then played after, right? So if I start the progression from silence to C, and I do C to F major to A minor to F major and back to C, your ear it knows that C is home base. But let's figure out when the ear notices the switch. So here's C major F major, A minor. Now I'm going to throw in a D, which does not belong to the key of C. This is our entry point into the key of G. And then we're going to throw in a G, and then we'll throw in an E minor, which is the 6th chord, and then we'll throw in a C, and then we'll throw in the D again, and then we can end on G. Alright, now I'm going to do that without talking. Ended on G. So I made the transition from the key of C, which is the universe over here. I used the A minor, which is present in both keys, as a wormhole to get over to the key of G. The 5 chord D major is what really cements our ear to the fact that we're now grounded in G. And then of course we end on G, and G feels like home. If you end on G during the course of a progression in the key of C, it's going to sound like the 5 chord. But if you end on G, having used the A minor as the pivot chord to get you over to the key of G, and then you play the 5 chord, and then you play the 1 chord, and then you throw in the 6 and the 4, and then the 5 again, you can then resolve back home to G, ending over here in the parallel universe using the pivot chord, wormhole, and it all works so great because they're closely related keys. So I hope that made sense, right? If you guys like this video, hit the like button, subscribe if you're new, leave a comment telling me whether you liked it or not. I hope the extremely awesome viewer that's always leaving me amazing comments gets to see this video. Leave a comment below if you've seen it, buddy, and we'll see you on the next one. All right? Thank you for watching.